2 weeks that changed us. There's something strange about time when you're emotionally tired. 2 weeks can feel like 2 years, especially when love, marriage, and your own expectations are all pulling at you from different directions. I'm living in the United States, and in the last 2 weeks, nothing dramatic happened on the outside. No big fights. No shouting. No slammed doors. But inside the house, and inside me, things were quietly heavy. You probably know this feeling. Life keeps moving, but your heart walks a little slower behind it. In the mornings, I still made coffee. In the evenings, we still sat in the same room. But something was missing. Words felt risky. Silence felt safer. And strangely, my English felt the same way. Stuck, cautious, afraid to come out wrong. When you're emotionally overwhelmed, your brain goes into protection mode. Neuroscience calls this cognitive load. In simple terms, your mind is too busy surviving to learn. That's why, during those 2 weeks, even listening to slow English felt exhausting. My ears worked, but my attention didn't. I replayed sentences. I forgot words I already knew. It wasn't laziness. It was emotional fatigue. At the same time, my relationship was under a quiet kind of pressure. Not the loud, movie-style drama. Just unmet expectations, tired eyes, and the feeling that we were both trying, but not connecting. Love doesn't disappear suddenly. It thins out when nobody has the energy to hold it. One night, I caught myself thinking, why am I even trying to improve my English right now? And then another thought followed, softer but sharper. Why does this feel so similar to how I feel about us? That's when I realized something important. Learning a language and maintaining love use the same muscle, presence. When you're not present, both start to weaken. So I stopped forcing progress. No new vocabulary goals. No grammar rules. Just small, human moments. A simple sentence here. A calm tone there. Sometimes it was just, I'm tired today, said slowly, honestly, without fixing anything. That was still English. That was still communication. Psychologists talk about emotional safety as the foundation for growth. Without it, the brain resists change. With it, even small inputs matter. Those 2 weeks taught me that healing doesn't begin with effort. It begins with permission, to slow down, to feel, to speak imperfectly. This section isn't about success. It's about noticing the moment when everything feels fragile. Because that moment is often where real learning, and real love, quietly begins. Love when words fail. It's funny how arguments don't always arrive with raised voices. Sometimes they arrive as pauses that last a little too long. In the second week, that's what filled the space between us. Not anger. Not blame. Just a growing distance made of unfinished sentences and thoughts we didn't trust ourselves to say out loud. You might think silence is peaceful. Your nervous system disagrees. When important words stay trapped inside, your body stays alert, like it's waiting for something bad to happen. That week, I noticed my shoulders were always tight. My breathing stayed shallow. And when I tried to listen to English, slow, simple English, I couldn't stay focused for more than a minute. My brain kept drifting back to what wasn't being said at home. There was one moment that made everything clear. We were standing in the kitchen, deciding something small, what to eat, maybe. The kind of conversation that shouldn't matter. But it did. I said something quickly, not carefully. The response was quiet, short. And suddenly, both of us stopped talking. Not because we had nothing to say, but because saying the wrong thing felt dangerous. This is where language and love overlap. When emotional stakes are high, your brain prioritizes safety over clarity. Scientists call this the amygdala response. In normal words, your fear center takes control. When that happens, complex language shuts down. That's why your English disappears when you're nervous. That's why honest conversations feel impossible when love feels fragile. That I noticed myself switching to very basic English in my head. Short sentences. Simple words. I don't know. I'm tired. Let's talk later. At first, I felt embarrassed. This wasn't the level I wanted to be at. But then I realized something important. Basic language is not weak language. It's survival language. That week, we didn't solve anything. But we slowed down. I practiced saying fewer words, more carefully. Not to sound smart. Just to sound real. Sometimes I pause before speaking, the same way you pause when listening to slow English audio. Giving myself time. Letting the sentence land, and something shifted. Not dramatically. Just enough. The tension softened. The silence became less sharp. And my English, still simple, felt usable again. Not perfect. Not fluent. But alive. Psychology tells us that communication breaks down not because of lack of vocabulary, but because of emotional overload. When you lower the emotional volume, language comes back online. That's true in relationships. It's true in learning English. So if you feel stuck, mute the pressure before you blame your ability. Sometimes love fails first. And when it does, words follow. The good news? When you create safety again, both can return, quietly, together. Quiet nights in America. Nighttime changes everything. During those 2 weeks, the evenings in our home felt longer than usual. Outside, the American streets were calm, lights steady, cars passing without urgency. Inside, the quiet sat between us like a third presence. Not hostile. Just heavy. You could feel it in the way the TV played too low, or how we both checked our phones a little too often. This kind of silence doesn't look dramatic, but your body feels it. Studies in behavioral psychology show that prolonged emotional ambiguity, when nothing is clearly wrong, but nothing feels right, creates more stress than open conflict. Your nervous system hates uncertainty. And mine was exhausted. That I noticed something else during those nights. When I tried to practice English, even passively, just listening, no pressure, I felt resistance. My mind wandered. Sentences floated past without meaning. It wasn't about difficulty. It was about attention. Emotional weight steals attention before it steals motivation. One night, instead of forcing a lesson, I put on a short English audio while washing dishes. Slow voice. Simple words. Nothing intense. I didn't sit down. I didn't take notes. I just let the sound exist in the room. And something interesting happened. The English didn't feel like a task. It felt like background life, the way language is supposed to feel. That's when I realized how artificial most learning environments are. We expect ourselves to perform while emotionally distracted. But the brain doesn't work that way. Neuroscientists explain that working memory, what you use to understand language, shrinks under emotional strain. So when you're overwhelmed, your capacity to process even easy input drops. Those quiet nights taught me that presence matters more than effort. Being near each other, even without deep conversation, slowly lowered the tension. And as the emotional noise decreased, my ability to listen returned. Not suddenly. Gradually. Like adjusting your eyes in a dark room. I began repeating small English phrases out loud while doing normal things. It's getting late. I'm almost done. Not for practice. Just because they fit the moment. No correction. No self-judgment. That's how children learn language, inside safety, not performance. Love works the same way. You don't fix it by forcing big talks at the wrong time. You let calm return first. You let shared space feel safe again. Words follow when they're ready. Those quiet American nights weren't empty. They were doing invisible work. Teaching me that healing doesn't announce itself. It whispers. And if you listen slowly enough, in any language, you'll hear it. English in real life. Real change didn't arrive with a big conversation. It slipped in through ordinary moments, the kind you usually ignore because they feel too small to matter. During the second week, I stopped treating English like a separate activity. I let it live inside the day, the same way our relationship was trying to survive inside routine. One morning, while making breakfast, I said a simple sentence out loud. Slow. Calm. I didn't sleep well last night. No lesson. No repetition. Just a sentence that matched how my body felt. The words weren't impressive, but they were honest. And honesty has a strange effect. It lowers defenses. When language is connected to real emotion, your brain processes it differently. Cognitive science shows that emotionally relevant input is remembered longer and understood faster. That's why textbook sentences disappear, but one meaningful line can stay with you for years. That morning sentence stayed. I began doing this more often. Not constantly. Just naturally. Short English phrases during normal life. I need a break. Let's eat later. I'm still thinking. These weren't performances. They were bridges, between feeling and expression, between silence and connection. Something subtle happened in the relationship too. The pressure to explain everything disappeared. When words are simple, they feel safer. My partner didn't need a perfect explanation. Just clarity. Just presence. And strangely, using basic English helped me slow down emotionally. I couldn't overthink if the sentence itself was small. This mirrors a principle in psychology called cognitive pacing. When you reduce linguistic complexity, your emotional system relaxes. That's why slow English isn't just for beginners. It's for tired people. It's for anyone whose mind is overloaded. By the end of that week, I noticed I wasn't afraid of speaking anymore. Not because I improved technically, but because I removed the threat. English became a tool, not a test. Love became a process, not a problem to solve. The lesson was simple but powerful. Real life is the best classroom. When you stop separating learning from living, both become lighter. Language grows where safety exists. And sometimes, the most healing sentence is the easiest one to say. Why safety matters. Most people think progress comes from pressure. Push harder. Practice more. Fix what's broken. But your brain disagrees. Especially when love and emotions are involved. During that second week, I finally understood why everything felt stuck. Because nothing felt safe. Safety isn't about comfort. It's about predictability. When your nervous system knows it won't be attacked, judged, or misunderstood, it relaxes. Neuroscientists explain this through the polyvagal theory. When you feel safe, your brain shifts into a state where learning, listening, and connection become possible. Without safety, your system stays defensive, even in silence. That was happening to me. Not only in the relationship, but in English too. Every mistake felt risky. Every sentence felt like a test. And tests don't belong in tired hearts. So I changed one thing. I removed correction. No fixing grammar in my head. No replaying conversations. If a sentence came out imperfect, I let it exist. This wasn't laziness. It was strategy. Research shows that excessive self-monitoring blocks fluency. You don't speak better by watching yourself speak. At home, the same rule applied. I stopped correcting tone, timing, intention. I listened more than I responded. And when I spoke, I kept it soft. Not passive. Gentle. Safety grows in gentleness. Slow English helped here. Its pace forced me to breathe. To wait. To choose simpler words. And those words carried less emotional weight. They didn't trigger defenses. They invited understanding. By the end of the week, the atmosphere changed. Not because problems disappeared, but because the body felt calmer. When safety returns, growth follows naturally. In language. In love. If you're struggling with English, ask yourself this first. Do you feel safe while learning? If not, fix that before fixing vocabulary. Healing begins where pressure ends. A conversation that healed. The conversation didn't happen when we planned it. It happened when neither of us was prepared. That's usually how the important ones arrive. It was late, the house was quiet, and there was no dramatic opening line. Just a pause. Then a sentence, slow, simple, almost fragile. I don't know how to say this, but I've been tired inside. Not poetic. Not perfect. but real that I said it in English. Not because I wanted to practice, but because English created a small emotional distance, just enough space to be honest without falling apart. Psychologists call this emotional buffering. Using a second language can reduce emotional intensity, helping people express difficult feelings more calmly. That night, I felt it working that I spoke slowly. I didn't search for advanced words. I let silence exist between sentences. And something unexpected happened. Instead of tension, there was listening. Real listening. The kind that doesn't prepare a response while the other person is still speaking. The reply was also simple. I felt that too. No argument. No defense. Just recognition. This is what healing often looks like. Two imperfect sentences meeting in the middle. Neuroscience shows that shared emotional acknowledgement calms the amygdala, the brain's fear center. When fear quiets down, connection becomes possible again. We didn't solve the relationship that night, but we re-entered it. That matters more. After that conversation, English felt different. Not easier, but warmer. The language carried memory, emotion, meaning. When I listened to slow English the next day, my attention stayed. My brain wasn't guarding itself anymore. If you're learning English and feel blocked, consider this. Maybe it's not about ability. Maybe your system is waiting to feel safe enough to open. Sometimes one honest sentence, spoken slowly, imperfectly, is enough to unlock both language and love. Love teaches language. There's a quiet truth nobody tells you about learning a language. It doesn't grow from discipline alone. It grows from attachment. From wanting to be understood. From caring enough to stay present even when words feel thin. During those 2 weeks, love, fragile, tired, unfinished, became my most honest language teacher. After that healing conversation, nothing magically improved. We still had moments of distance. But something fundamental changed. I was no longer afraid of sounding simple. And that shifted everything. In linguistics, there's a concept called communicative intent, the desire to convey meaning, not perfection. Children learn language quickly because their intent is strong and their fear is low. Adults do the opposite. We fear mistakes more than being misunderstood. Love reversed that for me. When I spoke English inside the relationship, the goal wasn't fluency. It was connection. I wasn't performing. I was reaching. And when the goal is reaching, your brain prioritizes clarity over correctness. That's when language becomes alive. I noticed my listening improved too. Not because the audio got easier, but because my mind stayed open. Emotional openness increases auditory processing. This is backed by neuroscience. When the brain feels socially connected, it processes speech signals more efficiently. In simple words, when you feel close to someone, you hear better. English became part of emotional repair. A sentence like, "I need time," carried weight. A phrase like, "I'm here," meant more than grammar ever could. These weren't exercises. They were moments, and here's the part most learners miss. Language learned in emotional context sticks. It roots itself deeper than memorized rules. That's why you forget textbook phrases but remember words spoken during meaningful moments. Love didn't make me fluent. It made me brave enough to stay. To listen. To speak slowly without apology. And that's where real progress lies. That if you're learning English, don't ask only, how can I improve faster? Ask, where can I use this language to connect? Because when love is involved, even quietly, language follows. What is love healing? By the end of those 2 weeks, nothing in my life looked dramatically different. The house was the same. The schedule was the same. My English was still slow, still simple. But inside, something had shifted, and that's usually how real healing works. Quietly. Without asking for permission, love didn't fix everything. It revealed what needed care. When things feel hard, relationships, marriage, language learning, we often assume the problem is effort. Not enough practice. Not enough patience. Not enough discipline. But psychology suggests something else. When you feel stuck for too long, it's often because a part of you feels unseen or unsafe. Learning stops when protection takes over. So I started asking a different question. Not, how can I improve my English, but, what part of me is asking to be healed right now? Fatigue? Fear of disappointing someone? Fear of being misunderstood? Language struggles are often emotional signals. Wearing academic clothes. That I end those weeks, English became a mirror. When I rushed, my sentences collapsed. When I softened, they landed. When I judged myself, words disappeared. When I allowed imperfection, they returned. The pattern was clear. Language wasn't failing me. It was responding to me. Love does that too. There's research showing that self-compassion improves learning outcomes more than pressure. When you treat yourself with patience, your brain releases chemicals linked to motivation and memory. In simple terms, kindness helps you remember. Harshness helps you freeze. So I let English be slow. I let love be unfinished. I let myself stay inside the process without demanding results. And in that space, healing happened. Not loudly, not completely, but honestly. If you're watching this and feeling tired of English, of relationships, of trying, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what is love trying to heal in me right now? Not what should I fix? Not what am I doing wrong? But what needs gentleness, because when that question changes, everything else follows. Language becomes lighter. Listening becomes possible. Speaking becomes human again, and maybe that's the point. English isn't just something you learn. It's something you live, especially when love is teaching you how to stay.